This meeting is being recorded.
Thank you, Boyana. I will call to order the March 14th meeting of the Nantucket Airport Commission. My name is Arthur Gasparo, Nantucket Airport Commission Chairman. This meeting is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. For this meeting, we're convening by video conference via the Zoom app. The meeting will be aired at a later time on the Town of Nantucket YouTube channel. Please note the meeting is being recorded. All attendees participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. All supporting materials that have been provided to members are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. Please, for any response, wait until I yield the floor to you, and take care to identify yourself. Members of the public wishing to participate must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate and reserve the right to remove any member of the public who doesn't use a full name or acts inappropriately. And finally, each vote in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. And with that, we will move on to the agenda. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns with the agenda as posted?
No.
Hearing none, we'll consider that adopted by unanimous consent. And we have the minutes of February 14th for review and adoption. Are there any questions, concerns with those minutes?
No.
Hearing none, we'll consider those adopted by unanimous consent. We have the ratify the warrants of February 22nd and March 8th. Is there a motion to ratify those warrants or any concerns?
I'll make that motion.
Thanks. And Mr. Marks, do you second that?
I second.
All right, so motion's been made and seconded. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And that'll move us on to public comment. I see we do have several members of the public here with us. And this would be for comment on any items which are not otherwise on the agenda. Are there any public comments? You can wave at me or raise your virtual hand, speak up. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the Lawrence Lynch Corp taxiway echo price adjustment request. Mr. Carberg.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Following our commission meeting in February, I drafted and submitted a letter to the FAA requesting that they review their previous eligibility determination and consider the phase change and related repayment requests as a change order instead. I haven't heard anything back from the FAA as of just before this meeting, but I'll continue to track.
Okay, thank you for that and for getting that letter prepared, which we all saw. Does anybody have any questions, further discussion on that item? No. Maybe we'll keep it as an agenda item and hopefully we'll have an update by the next meeting, but it's kind of subject to the FAA response time, which is sort of out of our control, I would take it.
Usually they'll take the time they need to review.
Okay, and that'll move us on to our proposed crew quarters project. We have received several letters of concern from the Nobodere Farm at Meeting House Association. So we would like to acknowledge that we have received and are aware of those concerns. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Carberg briefly, and then we can, go through it. And it's really our intent here would be to hear any concerns. There's no real decision making that's happening at this point. We'll take it all under advisement and see, what we can do. Mr. Carberg.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chair. When I wrote my agenda notes, it had been that we had received 3 letters. I believe that is 6 or 7 letters now regarding the crew quarters plans from leadership and residents of the Nobodere Farm Meeting House Association. At least 2 letters should be in your packet with the remainder available as handouts. We extended an invitation to Mr. Jeffrey Keeler, the association president, to the meeting to address the commission with his comments. I also see that there are several other residents here as well. If it's acceptable to the chair, I just like to turn the meeting back over to you or Mr. Keeler to hear their comments.
Sure. Okay, thank you. I will open it up and, certainly we're happy to hear from all of you. I'd ask that we don't need to be, repetitive or say each of you say the same thing one after the other. If there are, differences, one person has stated what you were going to state. We are aware of the number of you that have the concerns, but anybody that would like to go forward, please feel free to raise a digital hand or wave at me and I will be happy to yield the floor.
Hello.
Yes,
Hey, this is Mike Friedman, owner in Park Circle. How are you?
good. How are you, Mr. Friedman?
Good. Thanks for having us here today.
Certainly.
Sorry, I'm in my shop. I haven't been able to get home to sort of do the Zoom meeting, but
You're fine.
we had just a couple concerns as far as the density of the project that's proposed, the location of it being very close proximity to where our condos and property are. Any buffer area that was sort of planned or thought about between the north side homes and the property you guys have intent to build on. And just wondering, how far along the plans are, if it's sort of set up in a way as you're going to start north or south, or, when the starting date would be. And then sort of if there was any way we could push any starting buildings or property or access sort of further north from our property, just to keep all the busyness and traffic and congestion sort of away from that area, because there seems to be a lot there already. So that's just a concern mostly.
Okay.
Um,
We'll go through everybody's comments and, like I say, we'll take it under advisement, and see
Right.
what we can do.
Yeah, because weren't sure how far along the plan was. I know there's definitely talk about something starting soon. Just want to make sure that there was some discussion, obviously, with the neighbors about sort of layout and access and, traffic issues and patterns. And, we have a lot of those issues, especially summertime, with the amount of traffic coming up and down that road. It just becomes just big traffic jam, so I just see if there's, housing and more people added to that road, it's not going to help that situation. So,
Understood.
I mean, the whole island is going through that too, I think too, so as far as certain areas of congestion, et cetera. So that's all.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Any other folks from Park Circle? Ms. Perales, nice to see you.
Hi, nice to see everyone. It's like
Hi
so
there.
strange.
Hi.
Hi. Well, thanks for having us. I just want to say, to kind of add to what Mike was saying, I would say that my family has a strong concern because we are located on the side where the dorm is proposed to be built. And we agree with the association's request of possibly coming in further north, like further towards Milestones. So instead of coming in the inlet that, I don't know, Arthur, if you can put up the picture of the plan that has the yellow on it. I don't know if Noah can pop that up.
I have that available. I'll get that.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Mr. Carver.
Okay, perfect. So as you can see, the dorm currently, as we went through Capcom, is proposed to be on the lot closest to Park Circle. And what we were hoping in that letter is that you guys would consider coming in off, just coming in on the second cutout and putting the dorm where the yellow spot is, and then being able to start your development going around that way. And then possibly, like kind of what I heard at Capcom was that, depending on funding and airport need, you may not end up building all 11 additional units, but you would be kind of going in that semicircle, coming off and putting utilities in that one spot, and bringing them off the road where you're planning on putting the dorm, and thinking maybe we can flip it and have the dorm come in on the second cutout and then go around in the semicircle, is kind of what we discussed as an association and what we were hoping you guys might be open to. I think one of the concerns that comes with the dorm is just the density of people in that building, that it's seasonal, that it isn't necessarily families that might not have the exact same values that we're having along close to Park Circle. And we just feel like it might be helpful for not just the Park Circle residents, but also the airport, to kind of have a buffer between that. So we had talked about, being able to keep the trees in between, as you're not over there yet building, and also just really consider this density. We understand that the zoning has been changed, but that doesn't mean we have to build to the exact zoning. So that was one of the concerns. And I think Mike had asked, where are you at with the project? So it would be great if you could address that in this meeting, so that we could kind of have an understanding of where you're at and what the timeline is looking like. So if that could be addressed tonight, that would be fantastic. In addition, I wasn't sure about what your timeline was for being able to consider this and make decisions that you'd be able to vote on at the commission meeting. As I know, sometimes projects go slower than others, and we just, without us paying attention every single moment, there really isn't a vehicle that's alerting abutters. So just knowing when things are going to happen and what has already happened would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? We'll take all the comments and then come back. I'm not being dismissive. I think it'll just be easier to let everybody go, and then we'll come back. Was there anybody else who would like to speak? I can only Janine, what's your last name, please?
I'm sorry. It's McMullen.
Janine McMullen. Thank you.
Capital MULLEN. I'm
Thank
a
you.
resident at 13A Park Circle.
Go ahead.
My also concern, along with the other residents, my concern is, as well as the foot and bicycle traffic with a bike path there that's highly populated and used during the summer months, especially with the Strong Wing School being across the street, the new school being across the street, and as well as the density with the tree line as well. I'm not sure. I can't really exactly see on the diagram as to what you've considered and how you've considered it with the bike path as well.
Okay, we'll certainly take that into consideration. Are there any other comments?
Yeah, I just have one more question. Have you made contact with the new school, or are they aware of what's going on, as well as Strong Wings?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think we've reached quite that point yet. Any other comments?
Chairman Gasparo, it's Phil Cox from CHA. We are still in the very early stages of this planning, so we are in the process of definitely taking input from the residents at Park Circle and so on. So we'll keep that in the forefront of our mind as we go through the planning process.
And so to the residents, that's our owner's project manager who just spoke. And so I think that's what I also wanted to convey back once we took all of the comments in, is certainly, this is a long-term project and the airport wants to be good neighbors, and, we welcome your input, and, this isn't set in stone. I do think it has to be looked at for, in its entirety in terms of the property, and then we will advance and keep you posted. I think at least it would be helpful because there are so many of you individually, but we have been contacted by, your association president. So if we could be, I think, assured that if we were to communicate with that one person, that all of you would get the same information, I think that might be a good vehicle moving forward, so that there can be a line of communication that hopefully avoids, miscommunication and not having, while anybody could reach out, I think at any time, if we were to direct our, notifications, if you will, and keep posted just the association president, and then leave it and have assurance that that is being conveyed back to all of you. I think that might be a good way for us all to proceed. I would say, looking at the plan, and again, I'm not set on the final location. I think we need to really look at take the comments into consideration and look at it. But there is a pretty significant buffer zone even to where it is being proposed. I mean, look at the distance between your houses and where this dorm is being proposed, and it's, many magnitudes of time greater. Now, that's not saying I'm trying to push this particular location forward, but it's also, I think, important to note that, this certainly is not right up against, the property line. And, it is set in some distance. So let's, see what our consultants can come up with, looking at the plans, the site, taking these comments into consideration, and then we will, I think, come back with either a revised plan of some sort, or a final plan that we do intend to, move forward with. Certainly nothing is finalized or set in stone. I guess I would want to convey to you, this is a planning process, and we are hearing your comments. Ms. McNulty, I see your hand is up again.
Yeah, sorry. Just my other question is, I've been kind of away a little bit, but is this the only property or area where you've thought to build this this housing?
So this is the location which we've been approved by the FAA to construct the housing on. So the housing is going on this property. It's just a matter of how that gets laid out. Ms. Perales?
Okay, so can you also add me to any email that you send to Jeffrey, please? When you're communicating?
I'll defer to staff on that. Thanks.
Yes.
Okay, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a question about timeline. Is this something that you possibly could be making some headway on and deciding about plans before town meeting? This is an article that is going to town meeting, and so we would need to know if we need to kind of be opposing the article, or if if the airport is also kind of in line with what we're hoping for and hearing our concerns before town meeting or not. And that's on May 6th.
Well, we'll have another commission meeting in advance of town meeting, and I think, we're just hearing from all of you tonight. So I don't think we're in a position to lay out an exact timeline, but we hear what you're saying. And certainly, that's going to go the way, it's going to go, but we'll have a discussion at our next commission meeting, I think, as a follow-up to this. And
Okay.
maybe that'll better inform in advance of town meeting, and, see how it goes from there. I mean, I don't think that we in any way want to be insensitive to, the neighbors. This is a long-term project. We also have to look at, how that property is best developed from the perspective of long-term planning for the airport as well. So I think that working, with our consultants to try to meet both objectives would be the ideal. And let's see, what we can do, and what we might be able to come up with in terms of being able to, for the next meeting, have perhaps by then something definitive can't be done, but perhaps we are able to, know what the alternatives might be for consideration. and we can further inform that discussion.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. I just wanted to kind of bring that up because I know
Yep.
that the project might not be happening for a while, but if the funding is getting approved and going through town meeting and, you know, we would need to know if that, what that's going to look like.
Certainly.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yep. Does that take care of all the public comment on this? All right, seeing none, I'll turn it over. Mr. Carberry, did you want to have a little follow-up on this, or you have the information you need and can sort of work on that, and also open it up to after you if you don't have anything further, or you could follow commissioners, whichever you'd prefer.
I just have one item for clarification, and I won't spend a lot of time with it. You know, I understand that, I'm sharing my screen here, that this figure was referenced in Mr. Keeler's document. This isn't actually the commission's plan, and this isn't the approved or scoped project. During the CapCom process, the capital committee asked us, well, what would a hypothetical full build out look like, so we could evaluate the project? And we said, well, this would be a hypothetical, you know, fully deployed project, but this is not what was permitted, and this is not what we could build in the next 5 years. So I wanted to provide that distinction just with one more screen share figure. I'm sorry. One moment. So this is the figure from the environmental permitting that went through for the proposed extent of the project over a 5-year permitting cycle, which was 2 residences and in this location. So I just wanted to provide that as a comparison to the document that we produced for CapCom's own purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Carberry. I think this is important, and this is the limit of the line that's shown on this plan for a limit of disturbance. That's what we've been approved for under environmental permitting, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, anything you want to add to this? We will have this as a future discussion item, but we're certainly welcome to take any comments or input that you might have on this. Okay, so I think what we need to do is work with our consultant to see how we may be able to configure the proposed building and site plan in a way that is responsive to the concerns that we've heard, and you know, and then get a final, you know, sort of plan that we plan to use going forward. And we will have this, I will commit to at least have it as an agenda item on the next meeting, and would certainly, again, you know, welcome your comment, and at least give you a chance to review. And, you know, like I said, I would like to hope to think that we're gonna, you know, move forward in a sort of a positive, you know, mutually beneficial. As I'm sure you all can appreciate, the airport desperately needs housing, just like everybody else, and you've got an operation here that we need to run for the benefit of our community. And so you know, we have an objective here as well, and but want to be good neighbors too. So with that, if we don't have anything further, we'll move on, and we'll have this again and see what we can come up with. And thank you all again for your input. Thanks. Bye. I think Ms. Perales, I think we're gonna call it there.
I just wanted to say congratulations to Noah and Preston
Oh,
for their new positions.
Okay.
I think they're going to do really great. So
Agreed.
that was it. Sorry.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate that. And with that, and Mr. Carberry, I take it that you are able, and that we had Phil on, and see what we can come up with for what, you know, maybe alternatives might be within that approved limit of work. I'm not so sure that, and if not, even what it would be, getting, if it was to go all the way to the north side, which would get back into the environmental, I think it's important that we look at, what the alternatives are. I think it would be probably, ideal, or it may, let's look at it all, but I think working within that approved limit of work, given the scope of the environmental permitting that has happened, might be a scenario we need to do, but perhaps within that there could be adjustments. But let's sort of lay out the options so that we all can understand them better and know what it is that we can come up with to move forward.
Understood.
Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to the pending leases and contracts set forth on Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2. Could you possibly, either Boyana or Mr. Carrick, do you have those available to put on the screen, or I can? And then for you folks, if you wouldn't mind, the members of the public that were just here for that, if we could shut off our cameras, it just makes it a little bit easier. Unless you plan to, you're more than welcome to stay in the meeting. But if we could shut off the camera, thank you.
Thank you, Boyana.
Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Carberg.
Okay, we have a number of items that are still pending, and we have a few items that have recently come in and are available as handout. I'm going to handle Exhibit 1, and then I am going to recuse myself, and Preston will present Exhibit 2. The first item we have is a loan agreement with the Nantucket Historical Association. The loan agreement is for the model of the DC-3 tail dragger hanging in the non-secure departure area of the terminal. I know I'll miss it for a few months, but my recommendation is that we accept this agreement and move it forward, as it advances our mission of aviation education. And there will be a tagline and credit given to the airport for the loan. And certainly the NHA does a great job with their exhibits and their handling of material. We have a lease with American Airlines for a Bunker Road property for one of the old bunkers where they store their ground service equipment in the off season. It's for a small amount, $5,023.20. And then we have two airline leases. We have the JetBlue airline lease for $78,869 and the American Airlines lease for $31,632. And I want to mention it as a reminder, as these leases come through, the leases are for space rented on both exclusive and prorated bases by an airline's activities. So the lease amounts between airlines will vary greatly based on both the number of passengers and the space that they hold. These leases do not include activity charges such as landing and ramp fees, bag fees, etc., which are remitted separately monthly to the airport and are of much greater amounts. So I'll move those items for your approval.
Does anybody? We'll get some music here somewhere. Thank you. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns with the agreements and contracts just reviewed by Mr. Carberg?
No.
Is there a motion to approve the Exhibit 1 leases, contracts, and agreements?
Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor? Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And Mr. Harmon, would you please review Exhibit 2?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Exhibit number 2 was an amendment to a lease agreement for Nantucket Marine. So Nantucket Marine completed and submitted a land survey of 10 Sun Island Road, totaling 45,020 square feet. which was submitted to Boyana, I believe, on February 1st. That amended the lease agreement and the annual or monthly and annual lease. So the adjustment for the lease was $1,241. And then also wanted to add that they started clearing the lot on February 2nd and begin to remove the topsoil and relocate that to our other Sun Island lot for the stockpile materials. And that is still ongoing to this date as of today.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments, concerns with the lease amendment?
No,
Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the lease amendment?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you, Mr. Harmon.
Thank you.
And with that, we will move on to the pending matters. Capital approval process, Mr. Carberg.
No change in that item, and I don't believe we will pick it up until after annual town meeting, but we'll keep it on here in case that changes.
Thank you. The PFAS, you could just roll right through these if you'd like, please.
Sure. So for the PFAS activity report, we are at 540 samples taken from 80 individual wells with the table in your packet. For MJPN 11 Amendment 2, the ongoing status items are the downgrading property status with work ongoing. Draft documents review is expected for late March. Potentially productive aquifer exclusion is also expected for late March, and we're currently working to finalize figures associated with that review. For Task Order Amendment 3, the status items are IRA status report number 13 has been uploaded to the website. I'm just going to briefly share my screen for that item as well for the public's benefit. So Weston Solutions is confirmed for attendance in April to at the commission meeting to review the IRA update and spring sampling protocol. There are two specific technical items that I believe are appropriate for this update. For members of the public watching or who want to find it later, under study documents, response plans and status reports, report number 13, which I already have open on this page. There are two items here. Figure 4 on page 39. There is an update on the bunker source area information. And figure sorry, I thought I had it written down. Figure 6 on page 43, there is some shallow soil samples exceeding the S1 results, and step-out sampling will be required by Mass DEP, and in the April meeting, the consultant can walk through their plan to address that. And we received an estimate for connecting in Mattoxin Valley Road residents of the water main. It's at around $18,000, which is an escalation since our original group of homes due to just the cost of goods and services that we're seeing on island. So we are working to contract and procure that work to get that resident connected this spring. And as of today, we've received the as-builts for the airport gas stormwater project, so that item will come off of our list. And then today, the EPA has issued a request for comment on new PFAS drinking water standards that are as low as 4 parts per trillion for PFOA and PFOS. It's unknown what these standards will immediately mean for our investigation. But at an industry level, it may increase the role of airports, but on the other hand, it may also lead to more joint remediation as other third-party sources are captured at that low amount. So we'll continue to track and watch this as it goes. Would you like to move right into finance or pause?
No, let's hold up there for a second, if we could, please. Just to make sure that if anybody have anything, comments or questions on the PFAS investigation.
I just had one question, Arthur, sorry.
No, please.
I was curious if, is it the next meeting you said that somebody's gonna be at? To do a
Yes.
presentation, the next one?
Weston Solutions, our licensed site professional, will be in attendance at the April commission meeting to present items from the IRA status report as well as the spring sampling schedule.
So is there any way to ask him like ahead of time if there's any information with respect to, you know, the water flows to the south on there, if there's any signs that the PFAS is diminishing, or does it have some sort of half-life? Do we expect to see that over time go away? Is it like a 5-year thing, or is it a 100-year thing? Before one would expect if we didn't add any more, it would actually dissipate and be gone.
I can ask them to be ready to address that question.
Thanks.
Thank you. So hearing nothing further, we'll look forward to a little bit more in depth of a conversation at the April meeting. And we can move on to budget transfers.
Okay, for finance, our statement audit and our PFC audit are still pending. My apologies for bringing this as a handout, to bringing the budget transfer item as a handout. But the State Department of Revenue has been delayed in certifying retained earnings, which has delayed our finance team's ability to make the decisions needed for the budget transfers. We have this information in a handout, and it will move forward to town fairly quickly to fit within the town and the ATM schedule. I'm here, I believe Jamie is present as well, so I'll provide a summary. We can answer any more in-depth questions. But retained earnings are an enterprise fund's certified net assets available for appropriation. And this year, our retained earnings are approximately 8.3 million. We haven't, as an airport, taken any projects to a long-term borrowing in 7 years, and we believe this is the appropriate strategy again this year, given the opportunity. Jamie has developed the recommendations that will follow. I've reviewed and I agree with them. Briefly, we're looking to transfer $7 million of the available 8.3 to pay off projects instead of taking them long-term. Now, the highlights of these transfers are that we would reappropriate $924,000 of unused borrowing authority into the employee housing project. We would also transfer $2 million from retained earnings to the operating budget. This includes two major items: a very, very conservative $1.5 million to cover costs due to inflation and outsourcing work due to our low staffing levels. It will also include a $500,000 to hold for an additional transfer to the town repayments, which could bring that total transfer up for the end of the fiscal year to $819,000 against our balance. That would be our regular repayment of $235,000, payment for in-kind materials of $84,000, and the $500,000 in additional principal. Now, we're also proposing payments to cover sponsor or ineligible or not yet reimbursed capital costs for taxiway Echo and the South Ramp, as well as anticipated sponsor project costs, such as IT hardware and vehicles. That's a summary. Jamie does a great job with this, and we're both here to answer any specific questions on the material in front of you.
Any questions on the budget transfers?
Mm-mm.
And are you looking for an approval on those, or is that just you are? Is there a motion to approve the budget transfers as listed?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Totten, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Marks,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Thank you. And next up, we have to discuss our in-person, hybrid, and remote meeting alternatives. I would say that since as I understand it, there is an option to extend the Zoom meetings, and since we're missing two of our commissioners, my preference would be to defer this discussion to the next meeting. So at least one more Zoom, and then let's have a full commission discussion on the hybrid in-person versus continued Zoom. Mr. Carver, does that seem doable with you?
Yep, that sounds great.
Mr. Marks, Ms. Topham, any concern with that approach?
Nope.
Okay, let's talk about it with everybody. And manager's report.
Okay, to begin with project updates, for Taxiway Echo, work has begun on the airport for drainage improvements to Taxiway Echo. This is a 2-week duration. Taxiway Golf, we issued the notice to proceed for the 13th of this week. Botanical survey, staking, and erosion control installation is taking place. Next week, we'll begin pavement removal, excavation, and drainage installation. For a note on both projects, we have 2 large and active projects coinciding on alternate ends of the airfield right now. So there's currently a lot of oversight and coordination. I want to give a lot of credit to staff for accomplishing this. It would be good to finish the Taxiway Echo project, and Taxiway Golf is a much needed AIP project as well. For the master plan, the aerial survey was delayed. That will take place though, and the forecast chapter is in final review. For the geometry project, the consultant is addressing comments received on the inventory chapter. For the HVAC project, the contractors were unable to mobilize to the airport as planned. That has been rescheduled to finish that work. For the Southwest ramp extension, the last item of informal scoping was completed. We're now waiting for receipt of a scope and fee from the consultants. For runway 624, which is a calendar year 2026 project, the anticipated expense is likely to require that we obtain an owner's project manager under our state procurement laws. If that's the case, we will need to work to issue an RFQ for an OPM this fall. And I'll discuss this further in the bid status item of my report. For the terminal optimization project, we recently received interpretation that we may not include the terminal optimization project in our current on-call RFQ solicitation. The issue being that the bid law chapter for vertical construction and/or the anticipated expense, the consultant selection process will need its own separate and dedicated RFQ. I don't think this will not impact the remainder of the projects contained in our on-call RFQ. However, we may face a delay of 3 months in designing terminal improvements while we re-advertise that RFQ. I don't believe it's impactful for our grant timing. We have the benefit of our OPM already being on board and available to assist with that process. For our ARF truck, changing our index from a potential B to a C in light of scheduled fleet changes for JetBlue, we've sent a letter to FAA making this request, and we'll wait to hear from them. The South Shore fence, this project was originally part of the project list awarded to Stantec in 2020 and will be re-awarded following the consultant selection process currently underway. For our non-AIP projects, we received a scope and fee from McFarland Johnson and are currently negotiating it through our owner's project manager. It does raise the question, since we did not have it for this commission meeting, if we may want to consider a special meeting prior to April to keep this project on track for fall construction. And I'll advise according to that. I mentioned earlier, airport gas stormwater, we received the as-built. Hangar developments will return this, with the commission chair's permission to the agenda in May regarding the potential use of freight hangar 8. And I don't have updates for you on the lightning arresters, right-of-way research, or stranded passenger plan since the previous meeting. For a bid status update, bunkers 60 and 66. We've reviewed proposals and we've sent award letters to Nantucket Oasis and Toscana for those 2 lots. The RFQ for planning and engineering, which I mentioned previously, we received 1 proposal for planning from McFarland Johnson. And we received 2 proposals for engineering, 1 from McFarland Johnson and 1 from Burns McDonnell. We will review and continue with that evaluation and selection process. We are issuing an invitation for bids for ARF truck maintenance. These will be available to the public on the 23rd of March with bids due by April 6th. We are meeting on Wednesday, tomorrow, to review the process for drafting and release of the RFQ for terminal optimization. And we are in the process of permitting, completing the environmental permitting for lots J and K, which will then result in release of an RFP for procurement of those items. And as I alluded to earlier, I'm recommending that the airport issue an RFQ for OPM services. Not only are these likely to be required by state law on AIP projects for vertical construction, the OPM costs for AIP projects may be eligible under those project grants. An OPM may also be helpful for us on large and complicated projects. For example, the town retained an OPM for their water main project, even though one wasn't required. Even if it wasn't required for runway 624, this may be a good idea for the airport, given the complexity and importance of this project. And there's also available expertise on, structuring RFQs. Well, I could discuss this with the town and utilize their work, but I also envision a combination of assigning project by project for potential on-call, and possibly additional time and material costs for assisting with items like drafting scopes of services, structuring these bids to save the airport time and effort. So we will review this internally and report back to the commission next month. Any questions before I move into an operations update?
Commissioners,
No,
please move on.
The Delta kiosk replacement on the terminal is complete. We've notified safety partners that gate 31 will temporarily replace gate 15 for a mutual aid mustering point during the taxiway golf work. We have a number of recurrent trainings coming up this month for staff, ARF and wildlife being some of those. Ground service equipment for Delta will begin to arrive to the Daisy Way lot in April. You may see it there as it's transitioned into the airport property. TSA, we are reviewing a memorandum of understanding with TSA as they perform a remediation to their inline baggage equipment. I've received the draft TNC, Transportation Network Companies, aka Uber and Lyft agreements from council. I'm reviewing these now with the intent to present in April or May to the commission with the companion documents so we can have TNCs under agreement by May. I have reached out to town and we've scheduled a preliminary meeting to review an unused lot in the bunker area as a potential impound storage lot. And there's some public interest that was in the newspaper a couple editions ago. We've also had a similar interest as we manage our own parking lot operation, and it's a potential revenue source for the airport, whether it's self-managed, a management agreement, or put out as land available to an impound lot operator. So we hope to have those, we will have those initial conversations and we'll report back. For an air service update, Southern will not be returning this year. We received notice from them this year that they're attending to what sounds to me like their essential air service commitments and routes in Hawaii. Wanted to thank them for their service and we hope to see them back. And then on the large air carrier group update from last meeting, I've advised the carrier that accommodating a 737 operation was looking like a difficult proposition for us as this late hour in the season. And it's something I'd like to revisit with them for this fall or a future year. For statistics, for January, total operations were up 12%, but down 11% year to date. Southwest ramp operations were up 25% for January. Employments were down 11% for January and up 2.5% year to date. For Cape Air, Boston employments increased 48%. New Bedford was up 44%, and Hyannis was down 69%. Martha's Vineyard was up 15%. Jet A gallons sold were down 8% in January and 10% in February. 100 low lead was up 34% in January and down 11% in February. Freight was up overall 6.4% in January, with Cape Air Freight, UPS, and FedEx all up, but the mail was down. And we had zero noise complaints as expected for January. It'll take 1 minute to share a figure for you. Here we are. Okay, so last month I promised that I referenced I was going to show more information on Part 135 air taxi employment history. In this graph, I have the calendar year on the bottom, and on the left or y-axis is the number of passenger enplanements from Nantucket to Hyannis. The gray background is the total number of enplanements. And each colored line represents the amount carried by a particular airline. Cape Air, AC Air is in black, Island Air is the dotted line, the shuttle is the gray line, Rectrix is the red line, Southern was never large enough to reference on the scale of the figure, but they would be a yellow line here at the bottom. So this market, it's been in free fall since 2007, which is as far back as the airport has reliable data. And this has been both a market choice due to ferry competition and the quality of the ferry product, and a regulatory one, namely due to the pilot career pipeline issue. Now, currently, this market is only served by one carrier, Cape Air, with less than daily service. This market is generally non-responsive to airport economic incentives. As we move and we begin to talk about air service and air service ideas, one of the concepts is, what are realistic goals that staff should have in trying to promote this market for the airport? What do we believe we should be working to influence, promote, or change? Airport fees represent about $6 per enplaned passenger for Cape Air on a $109 to $119 ticket. The CPE, or cost per enplaned passenger, is very low for the industry. We could potentially reduce it even further. Some ideas that I have, we could waive all landing fees for Cape Air. They're discounted right now for Cape Air. We could waive them entirely. We could prorate rent and reduce that further by the percentage of Hyannis flights that they operate. You know, we own the parking at the airport. Maybe we could find a validation scheme. Scheme is the wrong word. Validation system to validate parking, which is $10 for the back lot for I believe an 8-hour period. My own opinion is that I doubt these would be impactful against what the macro scale headwinds are. That I mentioned earlier, the market choice and the regulatory issues. Other ideas are, maybe there's an investment in future electrification. the future eVTOL and electric aircraft routes, where operating and maintenance is 25% the costs of a piston engine. Or we focus our efforts on investing and setting incentives toward year-round regional jet service. These aren't all exclusive. We could work on all of these at the same time. I did want to bring these figures. I don't know if you've actually seen this data put forward in this format and historically, but this has been a very difficult issue for the airport. I always thought of the airport, having grown up watching Wings, as the Wings airport, as an airport that was characterized by this quirky, non-secure commuter service from an island to the mainland. But as it stands now, I believe we had 5,000 passenger enplanements to close out this calendar year, compared to a peak of around 190,000. We're on pace to probably close calendar year 2023 at 2,500 enplanements, which is closer on the order to New Bedford traffic than it is to our historical Hyannis traffic. The item I'm looking for, and it's not an answer for now, but is guidance on how we should be pursuing this market, what the commission's values are, what the commission would like to see us take on, whether it's attending air service conferences, recruiting airlines to try to fly this route, incentivizing Cape Air to fly this route, or focusing resources on routes that do perform well from a passenger traffic standpoint. There are questions on those items before I move into the personnel report.
So I think you just hit on a lot there. Certainly appreciate that. I mean, I think this is a real focus that the commission, I would hope we can try to I think further discuss, and I don't know if it's at a subcommittee level or if it's at a commission level. You've kind of run through a lot of alternatives, but I mean, really, what can we do to serve our community, to really and try? I believe we need, or our community and the airport would best be served by year-round service back and forth to Hyannis. And maybe I'm sort of stating the obvious, and that's sort of, to help rebound these numbers. So I'd be interested in how we might take some of the ideas that you just sort of put out there, and what would be a way that fairly to anybody sort of out there could get that established. And I'm not sure, I'm kind of having an open discussion as related just to a report and not an agenda item, but perhaps, and it doesn't necessarily have to be for next month, but we have an agenda item at some point for a discussion that lays out, once the staff's had some time to lay out, and maybe we even consider a consultant to help with this. I don't know. Just a thought. It's, to put a presentation and options together. Someone that really, and I'm sure you guys could do it. Maybe you want to. It's just a matter of resources. I don't want to overburden, but so those are two ideas that I would have, is to have an agenda item for discussion at some point in terms of how to incentivize that year-round, Hyannis, or one of my other thoughts. I mean, Hyannis seems to be ideal, but is that too restrictive? Is it local, regional, something along those lines? I really do think that New Bedford also could be a viable option if if a free market operator made that work, but something along those lines. And certainly, while we can't mandate year-round, that's what our community, I believe, needs. And I think that's good for the airport, for activity in the terminal, we're well covered in the for activity in the terminal and the seasonal basis, but how do we really incentivize that year-round operation? So maybe some alternatives or a way. That's just my thought on that. And I don't know if you other commissioners or Mr. Carver, you had any other ideas so that this doesn't just kind of come up as one idea, this is an idea. I'd like to see this really, continue for us to work on it, especially, I mean, this graph is great. It really, I mean, we all kind of knew it in your last month's graph, which showed the comparison, with the boats and where that crossing turning point, I guess I would call it, happened. But I think that this particular graph really tells the story.
Thank you, and I appreciate the information. It's this is probably the most repeated comment that I receive from members of the public is, what can we do to bring the service back? And there is no quick and easy answer available to you, but it's something we're committed to trying to find a way to rebound. It's been lost over 15 years. It may take 15 years to grow it back, but I think that's the level of commitment that we all feel we can support you with.
Arthur had a question.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I was curious, I don't know if you know off the top of your head, and I don't expect you to. I'm wondering what the cost per passenger is all in. I mean, if we charge, I'm just curious, if we charge nothing, how much of the savings really is that? And is it really more of a marketing and then running a tight ship where you don't get to the airport and you wait and wait and wait and you're playing, and then you could have just gone and got on the boat and got there at the same time? I think that's the biggest challenge, the cost versus the convenience. And the boats become so reliable, and what the time is. On the other hand, I'd love it if I could I'd fly a couple people over, and it'd be nice if I could get them here in 15 minutes versus an hour sitting on the boat. So I see the value in it for sure with respect to time on both ends for the quality of life of the workers that come here, and also productivity for the employers. So I would love to see it come back in a fashion where it was affordable, and if not, the cost of the ferry, but more competitive with it. And I think that's probably the bigger challenge, is trying to get the numbers down there where it makes sense to fly over versus taking the boat. So my comments.
Thank you. I would only for that question, I would echo I think your sentiment that when I have conversations with people, very generally about this, there is a price premium people will pay for flying. They like it. It's quick. It's a beautiful short ride, but they would need that aircraft to run on time, whether that's a carrier schedule item or something else in the national air system that keeps that aircraft from operating on time.
Well, let's see what we can do to really maybe set this as a goal. I think, for what could we do, as a commission, certainly seeing this, I think it's a segment of service that we should really try to encourage. Okay, if there's nothing else on that,
Personnel report before we do.
yes.
We continue to have a lot of movements and news on the personnel fronts. The most difficult item that I report is that John Grangrave, the maintenance superintendent, has informed us of his resignation effective in early May. Johnny's worked for the airport for 34 years and is a long valued member of our team. His absence is going to leave a big hole to fill, but I hope that you can join us over the next 2 months and we can celebrate his tenure and role here together. In better news, Aoife Varian has accepted an open operations specialist position. Valina Ilieva will join us as a town transfer on March 20th to fill the administrative assistant position. A new seasonal worker, Kelly Paratus, who you may recognize from the Cape Air Counter, will join the FBO on April 4th. Sergio Rivera, a returning seasonal ramp employee, rejoined us on the 6th. Unfortunately, we made an offer to a second very strong operations candidate. This individual could not find housing and has since declined our job offer. We still have an unfilled maintenance mechanic position and one unfilled ops specialist position. And that will soon to be two unfilled positions, as Tim Mooney will be retiring shortly. Again, after a long and distinguished career with the airport. This still represents a strain on our ability to accomplish projects and tasks at the speed and the depth that we'd like. We'll never compromise safety, but it does compromise our bandwidth at times, and we have to pick among the most important tasks available to us and farm out other ones to private sector or to other areas which impact our budget. We will be looking to advertise and fill the vacant environmental coordinator position as well shortly. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Carberg?
Nope.
Sounds good. Keep us posted and see if you want, if something gets planned or what have you for Mr. Grade, please let us know. Any public comments for items that either were on the agenda or for future agenda items for commissioners' comments? Ms. Topham. Are you still muted, Ms. Topham? You're still muted. There you go. Yeah.
I could have trouble finding it. The other night I was leaving Crosswinds, and the arrival where the passengers come arrival and departure, we went that way, and it's not very well lit. And so with my sighted thing and the other, I couldn't really see. I had my flashlight that could work, but I didn't know if there was a way that we could get a better lighting system on that particular area on the crosswalk, leaving the airport on both probably doors.
Okay, thank you. This was the crosswalk area adjacent to Crosswinds.
No, this was on the arrival. If you were arriving or departure door, it was the one we came out on.
I will look into it and report back.
Thank you, Noah.
Any other commissioner comments? I'm hearing none. Public comment for any item that was on the agenda or anything else? Hearing none, seeing none. I would entertain a motion to go into executive session per general law, chapter 30A, section 21A, to review the executive session minutes enumerated on the agenda for review, possible release. Discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, where the chair has determined an open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the airport commission. Discuss strategy with respect to litigation regarding Walsh, where the chair has determined an open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigation position of the airport commission, and to discuss strategy with respect to litigation regarding potential claim for damages regarding 3 and 5 Evergreen Road, where the chair has determined an open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the airport commission, not to return to open session. Is there such a motion?
So move.
Second.
Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
The chair votes aye.
May I add something else, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
I wanted to say we're losing a very valuable employee in John Grandgrade. He's been there for years and he knows how to fix and do everything. So hopefully we can find somebody that will replace him with his expertise. Thank you, Johnny.
We all echo that sentiment.